Hey y'all, you're listening to This with Krish show, the show where I talk about real life, real stories, and real chaos. And all of that somehow turns into perspective, maybe a little bit of laughter, and then maybe something useful. Now I'm your host, Krish Dhokia, and today I'm talking about one of the most ambitious things a parent can do voluntarily: a family road trip. I know. Super exciting, right? Now, this past weekend, our family, the Dhokia family, took one, a real one. And when I say real, I'm talking about a 13-hour drive. It was actually maybe a 12-hour drive, but it took us north of 13 hours. 830-ish, 840-ish miles each way. And that's quite ambitious, I know. We also did it with a 3-year-old and a 7-year-old. Now, remember, if you've met my 7-year-old son, he's an old soul. He's practically an adult. But the 3-year-old, now that's fun. Now, when you tell people that you went on this road trip, they say, well, that sounds fun. And they kind of pause. I was at dinner earlier with my colleagues, and they said, wait, why did you drive? I don't know. They tilt their head, and they sort of respond, all of them, the same way, right? It's like, it's crazy. It's like you told them that you went to the gym at 4 a.m., which I've done before, by the way. They look at you with concern, they look at you with confusion, and everyone at the table today, there was maybe 20 of my colleagues, and they were all like, wait, what? And then there's like this silence. It's like an unspoken question of whether or not you're a sane person. Because a lot of them are parents, and they have kids that age or had kids that age, and they know. They just know. But something that people don't say out loud enough is that family road trips don't have to be complete chaos, you guys, right? It doesn't have to be a test of endurance. It does not have to end with you questioning every single decision you've ever made as a parent. It can actually be meaningful, and it can be grounding. And in some ways, in many ways, it can actually be enjoyable as well. Now, this episode is called A Parent's Guide to a Family Road Trip. And just because we went on a 13-hour each-way road trip does not make me a pro. But it's also not a fantasy version of what it's not a fantasy that I'm going to tell you. It's not a highlight reel. This is a real guide. Because despite what social media is going to tell you and have you believe, families still choose the road, right? You hear it every year on Thanksgiving and just around holidays. Oh, so many millions of people are going to hit the road today, right? According to AAA, more than 60% of family vacations in the United States involve road travel rather than flying, right? And especially after the pandemic, we found ourselves on the road quite a bit. We were going places. When we moved to Texas, we were just driving everywhere. It was great. Now, that number actually increased as families started looking for flexibility, cost control, and a shared time, sharing time instead of just speed. And, United States gas prices are at an all-time low, so that's going to kind of catapult the number of people that hit the road. Now, the U.S. Travel Association also reported that families who take road trips together report higher levels of shared memory making than families who rely solely on destination-based travel via flying, okay? Which totally makes sense, right? Because you don't really remember the airport terminal unless something really just amazing happens or not amazing happens. You remember the conversations, right? You remember the random stops, the things that your kids say that totally make no sense in the moment. That's where the memories are going to be made. Those moments actually don't happen by accident, right? They happen by design. And one of the biggest mistakes I feel like parents make is sort of thinking that the road trip starts when the car starts. And now if you know, you know, and let me elaborate here, right? Because it doesn't. It doesn't start when the car starts. We had decided to make this trip earlier in the week, right? So let me break it down for you and show what I mean. The road trip actually starts at least 48 hours before you leave the house, because that's when you start preparing, okay? Or quietly create stress and then pretend it surprised you, okay? That's when you either prepare or you stress yourself out, is what I'm trying to say. I don't even think I said that correctly, but you hear what I'm saying. Because at 48 hours out is when you start making sure your kids' favorite clothes are clean. Not every single outfit, just the ones that don't itch or they don't feel weird and then suddenly become emotionally unacceptable. It's when you start downloading the entertainment on your iPads or whatever it might be, because there are going to be areas where you just can't stream, right? Because of Wi-Fi interruption or whatever. You're in the middle of the boondocks driving down the highway and you have no movie or show. So you download it. Because one of the most common stress triggers in a family travel, right, is unmet expectations. And nothing breaks expectations faster than, you know, the screen kind of buffering and then you have a bored child. This is also where when you plan your, I guess, stops, right? So, you know, on the way there we had kind of planned to stop halfway, figure out what the hotel is and all that stuff. Don't be vague about it. Don't be optimistic about it. Be intentional, because you plan around your gas stops. If you know your car goes 400 miles to a tank, then plan it that way, okay? Now, every 2.5 to 3 hours is the sweet spot for kids under the age of 10. It's long enough to make progress, short enough to prevent complete and utter emotional collapse. Okay, and the stops matter, right? More than people realize. And luckily, as we live in Texas and we were on our way to Georgia, there was at least 3 or 4 Buc-ee's, if you've heard of Buc-ee's, to stop at. That was great. Now, research in child development consistently shows that physical movement dramatically reduces emotional just breakdown, right? Translation: kids don't melt down because they're difficult travelers. They melt down because their bodies are just stuck in this seat, especially like a car seat. Just like, movement solves what lectures can never will, okay? Now, let's talk about the front seat, because that is like science all in itself. Now, my wife and I, you know, split the driving. But listen, you're not sitting in a car, okay? As a parent, especially if you're in a passenger seat, you are operating what we like to call in our family a mobile command center. The front seat needs the essentials, okay? You need baby wipes. You need paper towels. You need like a bag for trash. You need hand sanitizer. You need the chargers, and you know what? This part actually matters. A spare shirt, not for the kid, but for yourself. Because adults are statistically just as likely as kids to be involved in unexpected spills. Right? We just internalize it more. You also need one snack that is only for you. That's not selfish. That is emotional regulation. Okay? So if the kids like hear you chomping on something, like, hey, what do you have? And we got that a lot. Make sure you have your own and don't share. I'm just saying. Now let's talk about snacks. Snacks are not food. Snacks are leverage. Okay. Many of you probably already do this without realizing, right? Because studies show that hunger and low blood sugar are major contributors to those emotional outbursts in children, especially when they're in confined environments. So, in other words, snacks are your infrastructure, okay? And having lived this, a total of 26 hours within like 4 days, we got pretty good at this, right? But the snacks also must be strategic, okay? Because, you know, the background snacks, they handle boredom. Mid-level snacks, they boost morale. And emergency snacks preserve peace. And if you have 2 kids, then you better make sure you have 2 of everything. Okay, no matter how big the popcorn bag is to the candy bag, you make sure you have 2 because they're gonna fight. And the same. Okay, now you do not deploy your best snacks too early. That is also poor planning. You have to ration out those snacks carefully, right? Roughly 45 minutes before your next planned stop is ideal. That's when the restlessness peaks and patience starts to thin. Although, if they actually have to use the potty, well then, all bets are off, okay? The clock starts over. Entertainment works the same way, right? Rotation, not dependence. Audio content first. It keeps their engagement high without overstimulation, and then reduces the motion sickness as well. If your kids, luckily, thank God, our kids don't get motion sickness, but hey, it can happen. Then the Game Boy or whatever game contraption. For my daughter, it was just a coloring book. But interactive games give kids agency, right? And research consistently has shown that perceived control lowers those stress responses. And then, the screens are last. Strategically and without guilt. This is not everyday parenting, you guys, okay? This is what I like to call situational leadership, okay? Here's the most part people will misunderstand. And before any of you get all crazy, just admit it. You do the screen part too, even though you don't allow it in your home. Maybe you do for travel. Most road trip meltdowns are not behavioral issues. They are physiological and emotional overload, fatigue, hunger, lack of control, sensory discomfort, and also the transition, the stress led by transition. Your job is never in the car to win the argument. Your job is to restore that balance, right? Name the feeling, offer two choices, right? And then change that environment. And my personal favorite is to talk it through, right? With verbal games, oh, what's the animal sound that this, whatever, right? Oh, look at those trees, really diverting their attention. Opening a window for about 20 seconds can reset maybe a moment faster than any reasoning that you could do verbally as well. So that's a good trick and a tip. Now, there's things the kids want you to help put their sock on mid-travel for whatever reason, and it came off. They want you to adjust their seat, right? Just move on, okay? Just try to reset it without having to crawl back there and put a sock on or find a pacifier. Now let me tell you about our 13 hours, okay, and how it actually went. The first hour for my wife and I was just pure optimism. The dangerous kind of optimism, okay? Then hour 2 brought the first bathroom request. Nothing urgent, right? Just a procedure that we had to, kind of go with. Hour 3 was the first planned stop, right, with movement. But everyone was still calm. Now, hour 4 introduced the snack negotiations that kind of felt like international diplomacy. Hour 5, well, then that turned kind of philosophy, it was all about philosophy, right? The 7-year-old began asking really deep questions that science hasn't quite answered yet. Hour 6 stabilized with more mid-tier snacks, right? We introduced those. I think it was cheese sticks and mini Baby Bells and things like that. And hour 7 was lunch, which is always, it's not about nutrition. I think we went to Zaxby's because we love Zaxby's, by the way. If you don't know about Zaxby's, I'm just going to tell you, it was a consensus in our car. Actually, that was the second day in a row we had Zaxby's because this is our trip coming back, by the way. Hour 8 was quiet time, right? And that was the most productive stretch of our day driving. Hour 9 declared another bathroom emergency. That kind of resolved itself through sheer willpower. Hour 10, we pulled out the screens carefully, responsibly and successfully. Okay, I think one was watching Dude Perfect, and I think the other one was watching something else, I forget. But Hour 11 introduced that emotional intensity, not sadness, just that strange tension that comes when everyone wants the trip to just end, including my wife and I. But they also want it to matter, okay? Now, Hour 13 was Arrival. Oh, was awesome, okay? We arrived, pulled into our driveway, and here's what matters most, okay? We talked a lot on our road trip. We laughed an awful lot, some belly laughs. Some of the laughs, I think, came from just pure exhaustion, right? But we were all together. And long-term family studies have consistently shown that shared experiences like road trips contribute more to a child's sense of connection and belonging, right? And much more than like those material gifts or maybe isolated activities. Not because road trips are perfect. I never said that. Okay, they're never going to be perfect, but because they're shared experiences. And I love that. I went on a lot of road trips as a kid with my parents and my siblings, and I remember those, all of those. Right? I don't remember, like I said, the times in the airport. And here's the takeaway from this short but very intentional episode, because we just lived this, right? You guys are not raising perfect travelers. But what we are doing, collectively, are raising resilient humans in our children, right? Your expected time of arrival is aspirational, right? Your ETA. We're almost there is a dangerous phase because your child will ask for a snack while holding a snack. If you forget the wipes, the universe will correct you. And the back seat, okay, will always feel like a small country with unstable leadership. And man, like personally, like I feel like a personal attack when people eat in the car because I can't stand it, like crumbs and stuff. We have a white leather interior, okay, in my wife's SUV. It's crazy town. But listen, if you plan and if you pace and if you stay flexible and like swallow your pride about eating in the car or whatever is working against your internal peace, then you'll do better, okay? A family road trip does not have to be complete chaos. It can be a memory, and those are worth every mile. I think that, in a year's time or 10 years' time, we can talk about it. Hey, do you remember when we drove down to Atlanta, like randomly for like 13 hours each way just to see your grandparents and eat at Daddy's favorite restaurant? And anyway, so that's the whole episode today. Episode of This with Krish. And if you're listening on Spotify, make sure you follow the show so you never miss an episode. Okay, if you're watching on YouTube, please hit subscribe and turn off notifications. New episodes are dropping regularly, and you do not want to miss them. I've got some fun things planned over the course of the week. And if you know a parent, okay, about to attempt a long drive road trip with their children, send this episode to them because someone needs to step in before they attempt 800 plus miles powered only by optimism and good vibes. Okay? So anyway, that's all we got for today. I'll see you on the next one. And as always, I love y'all.